Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest version of Tales from Outer Space, where I take an HFY story from somewhere around the internet and read it aloud for your enjoyment. All the relevant links are down below. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube comf to help this video and channel grow. Anyways, as always, I hope that you enjoy. I would just like to thank the following Tier 5 patrons and channel members for supporting the channel: Datamagnet and Bob the Dragon. Thank you again. And now, on to the story. Humans Don't Make Good Familiars, written by Dragfie. Around me, all that could be heard was pencils filling in multiple choice bubbles. Some determined, some less so to get a good enough result to get into university of their owner's choice. I wasn't too stressed since the generic engineering course I wanted to enter wasn't particularly hard to get in, and I happened to not suck at math. As it happened, we were 10 minutes into the mid-year math exam when under me a bright geometric patterned circle appeared illuminating the room. Startled, I looked up, but no one seemed to notice, and the examination supervisor was staring daggers right at me. That was when everything went dark. Just as fast as it disappeared, the world came back into view again. Except my view was full of little multicolored feathered bird nymphs staring at me. Surprised, I staggered back before I managed to balance myself and looked around the room I was in. The roof was just above my head, but assuming the 20-centimeter tall bird fairies, the only other living thing in the room, were what this room was designed for. It looked more like a sports hall. In fact, those were definitely some kind of gymnastics bars, and those were definitely for climbing, and those were no doubt for the goals of some kind of game. Turning my attention back to the nymphs, I could definitely recognize a couple amongst them which seemed to look a little larger, duller colored, and dressed in what definitely made them look more, professional. There was one standing in front of the crowd of younger nymphs, seemingly holding them back behind an invisible line, while behind the crowd stood three who definitely looked more, apprehensive. My attention finally rested on the bright blue bird nymph facing me and standing in front of all the others. It looked like it was fidgeting, peering up at me with upturned eyes. "Purple," it chirped, and as it did I felt encouragement, demand, and I should tell them who I am, and I guess they wouldn't know. "Hey, I'm Jake," I said to the crowd at large, waving my hand. The group of brightly colored nymphs exploded into a cacophony of shushed chirps, which strongly reminded me of excited whispering when someone did something amazing, but that someone also was in your class, which meant whatever you did was going to be compared to it. The four who I was starting to suspect were teachers seemed to relax a little, but their gazes stayed wary. The little blue one at the front seemed to gain a little confidence, straightening its back while its face was getting what seemed to be just a little bit brighter. "Purple," it chirped, and once again, but this time I felt authority, submission, and, I should come to my master. Wait, master? I cannot keep her waiting. What? Why can't I keep who waiting? How did I know? No! I must walk to her. What the feck? Why am I thinking? Go to her! Holy shit, this is mind control. Go to her now! Get out of my head! As I yelled, the crowd of birds shrank away, falling completely silent. Even the four what seemed to be teachers looked stunned, but quickly recovered and readied what looked like intricately decorated wooden sticks. In the silence, the blue one repeated nervously, "Peru." Nervousness, demand obedience, and I should— No! This time the crowd scattered, chirping desperately as they flapped over each other. The three teachers at the back were prepared this time. Chirping in sync, the three gestured towards what looked like a jagged rock between them, sitting on a trolley, and motioned towards me, followed by the rock doing the same at a speed of a pegged handball. Out of pure instinct, my hand came forward, and around the room resounded a loud snap, followed by a louder "Fuck!" The mayhem instantly came to a stop as the little feathered heads turned towards the source of the sound. I took the rock out of my right hand with my left and looked at the broken pencil that I must have been holding this whole time. It had snapped, and one of the two broken halves was protruding, a little into my palm. "That hurt!" I shouted, throwing the rock back in the general direction it came from. The stone flew and buried itself halfway into the floorboards right in front of one of the teacher nymphs, who staggered back and fell over with what in hindsight must have been utter horror, judging from the facial expression. The fourth teacher was shaking the little blue nymph and chirping some things, while the rest of the students were softly stampering out of the room, bouncing against each other and the walls as they pushed open the large double doors. That's when I finally realized the gravity of what had probably happened. "Get her up!" I looked down at the little blue nymph chirping something again, but this time I didn't feel anything. Confused, I looked around and down at myself, only to see my legs disappearing. "Holy crap!" I exclaimed, as quickly my stomach, hands and chest faded into nothing. The last thing I saw before the world faded into darkness was the little blue nymph sitting on her behind, hands supporting her back, staring at me in what looked like shocked confusion. And then I was back. Students writing, the supervisor staring daggers at me. I was back. Glancing at the clock, it still said 10 minutes past the start of the exam. And why does my hand feel? I glanced down and saw my pencil, broken with a little blood and trickling down from my palm. It was almost a year since that strange encounter, and I graduated high school without any issues. I didn't tell anyone about the experience of that day, being strangely similar to what was popular in the pop culture trends at the moment. At first, I immediately thought that I must have been sent to another world, only to realize that objectively more likely scenarios which wouldn't get me laughed at. In spite of my efforts, I didn't see any of my friends jumping out and saying, "It's just a prank, bro," or "Gotcha," or even cryptic lines which may or may not be a reference to what happened. Nor could I find anything strange in what I ate that day, nor any opportunities for anyone to have slipped me something in my drinks. The supervisor didn't say anything about the pencils instantly becoming snapped, other than some bitchy incredulity about how hard I had to be holding it to somehow manage that. So I ended up writing it off as a mystery, but it got me thinking. If I did get summoned to another world and it happened like some of the stories I read, would I be ready? Since my answer to that was a solid no, I decided to do something about it. My sudden obsession with scientific and engineering knowledge actually ended up helping my final semester at high school, even if the new archery, martial arts, fencing and firearm classes didn't. I was now well into my first semester at uni, studying a flexible first-year engineering and science course, and I had started to doubt that anything was going to come of that strange experience. It was until one day at the firing range, as I was raising my rented Glock 34, the same geometrical pattern appeared on everything and went dark. Opening my eyes, there was the same bright blue bird nymph sitting down, leaning against the wooden wall behind it. This time, I was determined not to do anything which might spook it and lose my chance at a proper understanding. So I steeled myself to resist but not overreact to what will come next. It chirped weakly, and like last time, I felt my mind trying to convince me to do something. But this time, fear, grief, desperation. And it wasn't trying to order, it was pleading. This time, I understood it immediately. That chirp was, "Help me." Setting my face in a grim determination, I nodded to the poor creature and turned around to a scene of destruction. We were in what looked like the miniature great hall whose roof was just as tall enough for me to fit. But the tables lay on their sides, broken and cracked, with more of the little bird nymphs littering the floor, many in pools of red blood with the sickening injuries. In the middle of them all, now with its attention fully focused on me, was a massive monster. Massive for the nymphs, that is. It really was about the size of a large dog, reaching about my chest on all fours, and was best described as a bastard child of a lizard and a hedgehog. The monster tensed its muscles, opened its mouth, and screamed. An unnatural fear came over me, but it wasn't anywhere near as strong as the birdie's suggestions, only causing me to tense and clench my fists, causing me to notice what I still held in my hand. I raised my gun and fired, seemingly instantly, as it is with the speed of what it travels. There was a spark in front of the creature's forehead, a spray of red behind its head, accompanied by the sound of a metallic snap, and then the squelch of exploding brains. The monster's scream stopped, and it stood still, frozen in time, then slowly fell forward onto its stomach where it lay unmoving. I wanted to help the other birds, but my head was still processing what just happened. Then I just freak up. What if that was a person? I mean, it does have blood all over its claws and around its mouth, but what if it was a mistake? And all of these nymph things, how can I? My thoughts were interrupted by a single chirp from behind me. Turning around, I felt amazement, relief. Morning. I smiled. At least I had done something right by this one, and replied, "Any time." After hearing my words, the little nymph sunk back against the wall, closed its eyes, and lay there still. Just then, I heard frantic chirps getting louder from the corridors, presumably connected to the hall by doors situated at regular intervals on the walls. Turning around, I noticed I was fading again. My legs were already gone, my hands, chest, and then I saw the source of the chirps. Larger, more professional-looking nymphs holding what I could only describe as staves poured through one of the doors. One of them, a tall, for their standards, green-colored one, caught my gaze just as I completely disappeared. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.